Hi, I'm Ron and welcome to PopScicle, where I talk about popular culture, science, and everything in between. In this episode, I'll be talking about how a particular concept that animal behaviorists use in their study of animal behavior can also be used to understand some things that fascinate us in science fiction. And that is the concept of the UMWELT. This episode was inspired by partly the Star Trek Discovery episode 10 of season 4, which just aired a few days ago as of this recording. And also, it's something that I've been teaching in two of my classes, which I happen to be teaching at the same time in the same semester, which are the Biology of Science Fiction, which I've been teaching for quite some time, and a new course, The Evolution of Animal Behavior, Insights and Applications, which I'm teaching for the first time in its current iteration this semester. In one of the first sequences of the aforementioned Star Trek Discovery episode, our main characters are discussing how they're going to communicate with species 10C, which anyone who has been following this season would know is what everyone is waiting for. What species this is, what's so unique about it, how come it has technology that is of a level that the Federation hasn't seen in its entire existence. So it's very exciting to think about what particular type of species this is, and they've been sort of hyping it up, saying in interviews that this is going to be unlike any species that we've ever seen on Star Trek. And that's saying a lot, given that we've had pretty weird creatures, pretty bizarre creatures in Star Trek, including that one from Star Trek Voyage Home, the fourth movie, the one that creates whale sounds and tries to communicate with whales. But the question they raised at the start of the episode is very important. How do you communicate with a species, with an extraterrestrial alien species that you've never communicated with before, and that is very likely to communicate on an entirely different level given the technology that it has? So this is what brings us to the concept of the UMWELT, which in animal behavior or ethology or behavioral ecology, however else you would want to call it, is a very important concept. The UMWELT essentially talks about the entire sensory-perceptual world of any given animal. And it's important to understand that the UMWELT of one animal species will be very different, or at least somehow different, from the UMWELT of any other species, even closely related ones. It is the entire world, the phenomenology, so to speak, of an animal species, how it detects, how it senses the world, and how it engages the world in terms of its behavioral manifestations. Say, for example, think about the fact that butterflies and moths see in ultraviolet light. And in fact, many birds and insects do. So when they look at flowers, they don't see flowers the way we do in yellows and reds. In fact, red is a pretty rare color in flowers because of that. They really see in a different part of the spectrum, and that's the ultraviolet. Think about the tick, which of course we know as the parasite of a lot of our mammalian companions, including dogs and cats. And their UMWELT, their sensory-perceptual world, is essentially butyric acid and heat, because these are the two cues that they use to be able to detect their potential hosts. And that's the entirety of their world. They definitely don't see the world the way we do, literally speaking. As hard as we try, we can only empathize to a certain extent, and we've been trying, especially with our animal companions like dogs and cats. In fact, we've fallen into the trap of anthropomorphizing a lot of their characters, saying that they behave the same way that humans do, which is a very old-fashioned idea from the study of animal behavior. This used to be called comparative psychology, and for a time people thought that the best way to be able to understand why an animal behaves the way it does is to understand it from the lens of a human. Why would a human be behaving in the same way? That is probably also the reason why another animal is behaving in that way. But now we know from studies in ethology, which is more focused on the innate behavior of animals in the natural environment, and this was championed by several European scientists or ethologists, namely Konrad, Lorenz, Niko, Tinbergen, and Karl von Frisch in their respective studies. We know from ethology that it's not that simple. Definitely not that simple. We have to be careful with such interpretations. And what comes into play is the fact that we can't completely comprehend. No matter how we try, how much we try, probably no matter what levels of technology and innovations we develop, we will never really be able to fully capture the UMWELT of a species, of any other species of animal. So think about it. If the ultimate UMWELT of an animal species on Earth, of a species that we share this planet with, is beyond our complete comprehension, how much more an alien species out there? Just think about Arrival, the heptapods in Arrival. They see the world differently, not only in terms of visuals, in terms of the language, in terms of the alphabet that they use, or the script that they use. They also see time differently. And that's mind-boggling to us. They don't see time in a linear fashion. It's more circular or looping and things like that. So, in fact, that's sort of the ultimate, one of the ultimate examples of how one species' UMWELT can be so different from ours. Their very consciousness and cognition are different from ours, especially if we take into account ideas about consciousness and cognition by some scientists like Michio Kaku, who said that we are of the highest level of consciousness, at least among animals on Earth, and that's particularly because we have parts of the brain, like the limbic system, that enable us to predict the future and make decisions based on those predictions. That is also a core part of the definition of cognition for a lot of people. So how much more developed is the quote-unquote brain or nervous system or whatever else it is in the heptapod, in that it doesn't see time the way we do. They can definitely predict, but even go beyond that, right? So far beyond that, and they don't see time the way we do. So that's an example of an UMWELT. And the messages that we've been sending out are not which are radio signals essentially, are not necessarily going to be heard by alien species because they probably communicate on a different wavelength altogether, if not a different energy form or a different dimension for that matter. One of the more interesting ideas in science fiction, especially when it comes to alien life, is the Fermi Paradox, popularized by Enrico Fermi, which essentially asks, why have we not been able to communicate with aliens yet, despite the estimate that it is likely that there are so many civilizations out there? Why haven't we been able to communicate with any? And there are many possible reasons, but one of the most intriguing ones, and the one that I'd like to point out in the context of this video, is that they probably don't see the world the way we do. Again, we send out radio signals, but they probably don't understand those, or they probably work on a different spectrum altogether. And maybe they also are sending out signals, but we can't get them because they're on a different frequency or a different nature altogether. Maybe it's something that we don't even know about, a form of energy or a form of power that we don't even understand. So we can see here that at least the concept of the UMWELT and ideas about consciousness and cognition, and of course intelligence as well, could help us deepen our understanding of alien life, potential alien life, and alien life as you see it in science fiction. It can provide one of the answers to the Fermi Paradox, and it can help us basically gain a better appreciation of how diverse alien life could be, how diverse it is in science fiction first and foremost, but how diverse it could be potentially in real life. In future episodes, I'll probably try to dedicate time to more specific aspects of this argument, particularly when it comes to cognition, because cognition is one of the most fascinating things to discuss in both animal behavior and alien consciousness or alien intelligence. If you like this video and you would like to see more of the same type or anything about science and popular culture, don't forget to subscribe to PopScicle so that you may be alerted to new content in the future. Bye!